Hi, my name is Chef Joe Fusco. I'm an executive chef by trade. I also currently teach culinary arts. I'm here in my classroom today with my students. One of my students is videotaping this for me. And what I'd like to do is show you how to prepare a prime rib, especially during this holiday season. A lot of people like to use prime rib or some sort of a roast for their holiday dinner. So what I'm going to show you how to do is to start. This is a full prime rib. It's called a rib eye. And this is about 18.5 pounds. It's slightly larger than normal. Some of them average about 15 pounds. This will serve quite a few people. So if you were a smaller group, you would want to get a smaller roast. You can go to the butcher and ask for a smaller one. But what I'm going to do first is just trim a little bit of this fat off of here. I don't want to trim all the fat off because the fat obviously is flavor, and you want some fat when you're cooking it to go down through the meat and add flavor to the meat. So what I'm doing though is there's some of this fat that is not so desirable. It's kind of almost rubbery. So I'm going to take this off and get down to the nice white fat, the stuff that's really good. So almost done with that, and then I'm going to show you how to season it. Okay. Now what we're going to do is start to put some seasonings on here. What I like to do first is I like to use spray oil and spray the fat. And the only purpose for this is to help the seasonings to stick better. You don't have to do that, but I just find that it's easier to make the seasoning stick. So I'm going to add some granulated onion to this. And when you season a roast this big, you want to be generous with the seasonings because there's a lot of meat here. So you would put more on than you normally would. Also going to go with granulated garlic. You can also use garlic powder. A lot of people have garlic powder at home. The only difference between the granulated garlic and the garlic powder is the granulated is actual granules and it's easier to spread. The powder is very finely ground and you would probably use a little bit less of it because it is so fine. Then I have celery seed. Salt and pepper. That's the pepper. The salt, you can use regular salt or seasoned salt, or I have some Mediterranean sea salt here, which is just larger crystals. It really doesn't matter, it's just that you want some salt. And the most important spice is the rosemary. Rosemary leaves, they taste kind of like evergreens. When you use any type of beef, whether it be a top round for roast beef or a prime rib like this, you want to make sure you use rosemary as your main spice. That's going to give it the best flavor. I also, as I put it down, I crumble them up and that releases some of the fragrance and gives it better flavor. Now that it's seasoned, I'm going to put a little bit of oil on top just to kind of help the seasoning to stick. And then I'm going to put some vegetables around the bottom. These are root vegetables, carrots, onions, and celery. Together they're called a mirepoix, which is the term for those three together. A lot of times it's the start of a base of soups or sauces. So I've already peeled these carrots. I'm just going to cut them up into some chunks and sprinkle them around the roast. And this is going to add a lot of flavor to the au jus. Now the au jus is not gravy, it's the meat that it's the juices from the meat that you serve with it. And the way you make au jus is once this is roasted, you're going to take all the drippings from the pan and strain off the vegetables. You can eat the vegetables separately because they'll be roasted. And you want to take and add a little bit of tomato product to the drippings, which could be tomato juice or tomato sauce, because tomato product and beef go very well together. And you want to add some cornstarch and water to it, and it'll thicken up, and that'll give you like a slightly thickened liquid, hot liquid to serve with your prime rib. So that's what we're going to do afterwards. As far as roasting, you're going to set the oven at 325 degrees, which is not a super hot oven, and slowly cook it for about 2.5 hours. You'll know it's done by taking a thermometer and sticking it into the thickest part of the meat, And the thermometer should read 130 degrees, which would be a good time to pull it out. And you want to let the roast rest like you would any roast, so that the juices, if you cut it right away, the juices would flow out. But you want to let it rest, and that way the size of the meat with the amount of heat that's still in there will continue to cook. And it will probably cook another 10 degrees if you let it sit for about a half an hour, which would bring it up to about 140 degrees, which would be a perfect medium rare. So if you want it more than that, you can always cut each individual slice and dip it in the hot au jus, and that will, like some people want it more medium well or well done, you can do that way. But most people probably prefer it medium rare. Last thing I'm going to do is add some onion to this. I just cut the tops of the onions off, top and bottom, peel off one of the layers. Of course, it's going to give me a hard time. I find it's easier to cut the onion in half, that way it's easier to peel. Get rid of the scraps. And then I'm just going to quarter these onions and throw them in here. The last thing I'm going to do is add some water to this, because the meat itself will create juice and it'll be a very beefy flavored liquid, but we want to add some water to help that along, and also to roast these vegetables so that they don't just dry up. They'll be nice and moist. So I've got here about a half gallon of water for this size pan. Try not to wash the seasoning off the roast, so I do it off to the side. And that's it. This goes into the oven for about 2.5 hours. And again, take it out at 130 degree internal temperature, and the oven again is set at 325 Fahrenheit. Thanks for watching.